Welcome, welcome. If you're just joining us, there's an invitation to introduce yourself in the chat with your names and your pronouns and a sentence on what brings you here tonight or how you are connected or related, how you relate to land. You, Jillian, got Anne, Tori, welcome. Lindsay, already in the chat, the range of roles that you all hold is represented and exciting to see. We'll give maybe one more minute to get some more intros in there and then we'll get rocking. Hi, May. Good to have you here. Keep them coming. I don't know if I said this already. I think I did. There's no wrong answers. This is just an invitation to say hello, get together. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Sam. Welcome. All right. I'm going to keep it moving, but if you're typing and still introducing, please do continue. We're glad to have you here. Hi, Beth. Nice to see you and have you here. Hi, Kathleen. We are going to keep the introduction shorter. For those of you who are here from the last session, we're going to go quickly through this intro here to get onto our speakers tonight. But I do want to set up a welcoming space for us all and just a reminder that with everything going on in the world right now and in all of our lives, that we welcome you here tonight as you are. Maybe you're feeling full of joy, or maybe you're experiencing some deep loss on any level. Maybe you have some of both of those things. We know they go hand in hand. Maybe you are in a chaotic household right now and trying to focus in, or you might be exhausted from a long day out working in the field, or maybe your battery is dead from just staring at a screen all day. So whatever is true for you, we welcome you here. And let's keep these chat box connections rolling. And I'm going to invite you to share a word in the chat about how you're showing up tonight. How are you feeling? How are folks feeling out there as we get started with this session? Hi, Suzanne. Hi, Andrea. Hi, Ellen. Hi, Sophie. Overbooked. Indeed. Others. Again, no wrong answers here. Just looking to connect a little bit, hear how everybody's doing. Just one word. I know you can do it. Engaged. Great. Pondering, hopeful, tired, stretching. Zoom webinar is a great time to stretch. Love that. Tired but happy for safe, hopeful space. Curious, worked, interested. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Keep them coming. We shared some community agreements when you registered, and I'm just going to welcome you to look over them now before we dive in. And while you do that, I'll just share again a couple of Zoom things just to help us achieve these agreements. A couple accessibility things. One is there are captions available using the show captions button at the bottom of your screen. You're welcome throughout this time to come off mute and share or drop anything in the chat. I also want to draw your attention to the react button at the bottom of your screen, which lets you raise a hand, and that'll give me a signal to call you into the conversation. If you can rename yourself, that's really helpful. You just right click on your name. We want to make sure we know who everybody is so we can stay as connected as possible. And lastly, we get that this is a time of evening when, as I mentioned before, you might have other things going on. And so we welcome you to care for your needs at this time, whatever that looks like for you. And that said, if you're in a position to turn on your camera at any point during this call, especially as we get into the discussion and Q&A, we welcome that. This part of our goal here is to build community amongst folks who are interested in these topics, and seeing your faces can be helpful for that. So I want to share that you all are the teachers here tonight as well as the participants. I really invite you to bring your wisdom and your lived experience to the conversation, and there'll be opportunities to share in the chat, and also during the Q&A we hope to hear many of your voices, because this group of you all is incredibly brilliant. We have participants registered from 20 different states, 4 Canadian provinces, and y'all hold such a wide variety of roles in relation to land, food, power, and justice, and it is such a nice and humbling experience to be here with you. My name is Megan Browning, and I run programming for our Farmer Services team at NOFA Vermont, and my role here tonight is to serve as a facilitator for this important conversation. So my background is in vegetable farming and leadership, and I am no expert in these topics that we're going to cover tonight, but I come here with an open mind. I invite you to do the same, and my intention is to hold a learning and discussion-based space for you all. So we will spend most of our conversation tonight with Amara and Antonio, hearing from them. But before we dive in, for those of you who were here for the first session, you'll remember that we took a moment to name those who paved the way for us to be here right now in this conversation, and those who we owe our ability to be out in the world doing all this beautiful work, whatever that looks like for you. And just acknowledge the incredible ancestors and leaders that we have to thank as we dive into some conversations around alternative land access and business structure. So I'm gonna invite you again to participate in the chat by naming someone who you'd like to honor for their work in the space of land, food, and community, someone who's paved the way for you to be involved in this work. So take a moment and let's gather some names. And I have gathered up the names that were shared during the first session and put them here on this slide. You're welcome to repeat if some are calling out to you. But I welcome you to put some names in the chat. Let's lift up those who have been in this for a long time. Keep them coming. I see beautiful names coming through. While that's happening, I'll make a couple of acknowledgements related to this important topic tonight. Number one, land is only a commodity because of colonization and the artificial adoption of borders that are now governing us. And I just want to be very clear that we just cannot discuss land without honoring the indigenous people who've been stewarding this land since time immemorial, living in harmony and connection with the natural world, and who continue to do so today. I also want to lift up Fannie Lou Hamer and the Freedom Farm Cooperative. The origin of agricultural cooperatives lives with them in the Black community. This was founded in the 60s, that really out of necessity because of a denial of basic rights like food and housing. And there's so much inspiration to be drawn from this work. And in these conversations, amidst the political waters we're swimming in and the rising costs of land, what we're really hoping to do here today is come together and ask each other, how do we build structures that help us meet all of our basic needs and create opportunities to grow food and feed ourselves and our communities. Thank you all for contributing these names. We've got Chuck Matei, Dave Marchand, Audra Lord, Roselle St. Felens, Fannie Lou Hamer, Molly Anderson, my great-grandmother, Elsie Weisenburn, Stacy Brenner, John Bliss, Judy Alexander, Brandy Grayson, Suzanne Morse, Courtney Collin, Megan Phillips, Hillary Crowell. Beautiful. Soulfire Farm. Thanks, y'all. I appreciate y'all taking the time. Let us keep moving forward so we get to our speakers. We are hoping with this series to gather with our biggest hopes and dreams about the future of land and agriculture. We want to learn from each other about how we break down systems that do not serve us, especially systems that bring specific harm to marginalized communities. And for those of you who are new to NOFA Vermont, what we do well is gathering people together to learn and be together in community and support each other. I did a pretty thorough introduction to NOFA Vermont at our first session, so I'm going to skip that today. But if you didn't get a chance yet, all of our sessions are being posted on our YouTube channel, so I encourage you to revisit the recording and to check out our website. The one thing that I will repeat is that we are a member-led organization. So if you are not yet a member, I encourage you to join. They start as low as $1, and we want you to be part of the movement with us. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We're getting to the good part now. This is my last little, what can I say? My last little part of my intro before we move on to the exciting part of tonight. I just wanted to briefly share that being involved in the conversation about land access and work in the land access space is new for NOFA Vermont. We've not typically been part of those discussions. But speaking of membership, as the price of land gets higher and higher, our members are consistently reaching out to us for support and asking for our help in creating new systems that help people to get on the land and work together. And so we're really in a process right now of listening to understand what we're best equipped to offer. And so we're starting with this webinar series, and we understand that each project that we're bringing to highlight through this series is context specific, but we are really hoping to get into some details and demonstrate how some of these projects around the country are working for folks. And we have a really great series lined up. Our September speaker is to be announced, but we will be getting that information out to y'all soon. And then we've got awesome speakers lined up for October, November, and December, second Tuesday of the month at 5:30. So please keep coming. And lastly, there are a lot of organizations and people in Vermont that do regularly work on land access. So if you are here from one of those organizations, I encourage you to make yourself known. We have the Vermont Land Trust, the Intervale Center, the Land Access and Opportunity Board, the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust, Land for Good, and a lot more. The Vermont Land Link is an incredible resource for those of you who are land seekers or landholders looking for folks to get on your land with you. So I'm keeping a running resource list and will continue adding to it. And I encourage you all to put your resources that you know of in the chat so we can keep sharing, and I'll pass those out. Anything that comes up in the chat or during the session tonight, I'll gather up and make sure that gets compiled and sent around. So we are welcoming Antonio and Amara of La Finca Cooperative in Porter, Maine tonight to share about their farming journey and their thoughts and experiences with land access. I encourage you to listen and to learn tonight and share your questions in the chat. We will save lots of time at the end for question and answer. But if you think of a question while the presentation is happening, put it in the chat so we can be sure to get to it. And without further ado, let's get on to it. Amara and Antonio, welcome. We welcome you to introduce yourselves, your farm, and these radical systems that you're creating in Maine. Thanks so much for being here.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody. Gonna switch over to a little screen share and some fun video action.
Never leave you as sure as heaven up above me. From you I know I'll never be free. No, no. As sure as there are stars above, I know you were made for me.
So that was just a little snapshot of some of our co-op members and fellow land commitment folks as part of our broader network here in Maine. But yeah, I guess I thought we'd leave y'all with this quote, just kind of centering the earth in everything that we do, and kind of changing the framework of how we approach land and ownership. And yeah, because that very much is the center of the philosophy of kind of how we operate, both personally and as a collective. So let's see. Oops, how do I advance? Here we go. So we're based in Wabanaki, which is part of the Wabanaki Confederacy in what is now known as Maine. Wabanaki stands for People of the Dawn, or the Dawn Land. So we are very conscious of where we are and who's come before us in the work that we do. The farm itself is a small cooperative. We raise livestock, rabbits, goats, chickens. We grow organic vegetables, and more than anything, we are a center for community building, really trying to create a space for folks to come together on land and reconnect with themselves, with one another, and each other. Yeah.
I'm Antonio Lasal. The other part of, well, one of the other parts of La Finca. Um, actually, I came to this land probably, I don't know, 30 years ago now. I was like, wait, no, I'm not that old. About 25 years ago when I was in high school, I got adopted by a family in Maine. I'm originally from New York City and Bridgeport, Connecticut. So kind of a city boy that kind of transitioned out here, and kind of was used to walk through the woods with my buddy, and like there was this house at the end of the road, and I always wondered, like, who lives there, what do they do? And flash forward 25 years, I was living in California, and I met her, and it was like, oh, I'll move back to Maine, right? Like, because that's why we migrate. And well, I came back to Maine, and I was like trying to search for land, and I stumbled back on the same piece of property. The guy told me where it was, and we were driving out here, and I was like, I think I know where we're going. And it was right. It was the same property as a kid that I imagined, who lived there and like what they did. So it was cool to come full circle. And like, I honestly, I feel like the land chose us. Like, we only did so much to get to acquire it, and yeah, that was where you're gonna hear all about that. Well, it's interesting part. But yeah, it was definitely a spiritual connection that I feel like is involved in these kinds of projects and land projects, especially. I feel like it's good to kind of have that in the center of your mission, or somewhere in there. Um, Next.
Yeah. So yeah, we both have backgrounds in agriculture. Antonio on the West Coast for a long time, and I've been involved in the farming community here in Maine and New England for the better part of the last 17 years or so, almost 20, I guess. And so yeah, I think having worked on a variety of different farms, having worked in food and hospitality and all these things, we each have different kind of skill sets to bring to the table. So Antonio and I are kind of the primary farm managers, workers, grunt laborers, everything catch all. We wear a lot of hats.
And then there's two other members, which Aisha is the one holding the goat in the picture, and Dave and Jamel. Jamel I went to high school with in Freiburg, and yeah, we kind of all met back up, and like they're not into farming as much, which was cool. Like they just wanted to be like more on the organizational side, which I feel like co-ops need the balance of that. Like, we all can't be one thing, because I don't know, it feels it's too much on that person, right? A farmer, it's hard to be at a computer all day and you're out in the field for 12 hours. So it's nice to have the balance of organization and people getting their hands in the dirt.
Yeah, so each of them have a kind of different hats. Jamel has a background in environmental policy and like municipal planning, and Aisha has like a wealth of like web, social media, networking, kind of expertise. So I think as a collective, we can kind of complement each other pretty well. And so yeah, we formed as a co-op in the early spring of 2024, kind of right before we closed on this property and this land. After a lengthy process of trying to pursue our own financing with a bank and a more conventional lender, we kind of down to the wire were up against basically we were denied and we kind of had to scramble really quickly, knowing that this land, as Antonio said, kind of like we felt like it chose us, and we were really committed to kind of making it work. We reached out to our really good allies and friends and supporters, Land in Common, and kind of said to them, hey, here's the situation. Can you help us? And like
Came through like a knight in shining armor.
Yeah, so
They were able to raise a good amount of money to help with the land portion of the what do you call that, when you split it? Sorry.
Wait, what?
When you split the land and
I guess the appraisal, like we were able to assess the value of the land separately from the value of the buildings and the infrastructure. Yeah, so Land in Common stepped in and was able to, together we were able to fundraise enough to put a down payment to close on the property, and really like forge a path forward for us on this land. So I guess maybe just to step back 1 second, I'm not sure if Autumn is here, but we might be able to hear later on in the chat from someone from Land in Common, but they're a community land trust here in Maine that supports primarily Wabanaki Indigenous Black and brown led efforts, like returning land to what we call the commons, taking land out of the private market and putting it into this public commons so that in perpetuity it can be available for folks to use, as the understanding that land is life and livelihood and housing and food and all of those things together. So ensuring that we can have more of that available to people. And so we set up a 99-year land commitment, we call it, which is basically the equivalent of a ground lease. And so that with our LLC structure, I guess, like to talk kind of nitty gritty, we have an LLC that basically operates as a cooperative. So we have bylaws, we have all sorts of agreements, we have kind of rules and expectations, like how to onboard new members, what happens when a member leaves. We worked kind of diligently using other models of other cooperatives and kind of selected what felt like what resonated with us, what felt like it made sense. We had a lawyer look at it, little like give the once over and give it the okay. And so formed our bylaws also with the understanding that
they're flexible.
Exactly. Yeah.
That was the main thing, because we didn't want people to feel like they were like joining a gang or something, right? Like this is something that's good for people, right? So like if you want to leave, you can leave. You know, that we had to write that in from the beginning.
Because co-ops are also a flexible being. They're constantly evolving. Yeah, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself perhaps, but just like nitty gritty again about who we are is the co-op itself has what we call like a patronage allocation for profits when we're hopefully off and running and really profitable. Basically, we've established that half of the profits of any fiscal year will be reinvested back into the co-op, and then the remaining half is equally divided amongst the members. And for now, as founding members, all of us have kind of committed to investing sweat equity as our like onboarding, as our initial investment. But then moving forward, we are working out different kind of tiers of membership and how people can come on, whether it's like a buy-in, whether it's also like a work share. There are a lot of cool models. Rocksteady Farm, who I saw is actually one of the folks speaking at the end of the series. Some of ours was kind of even modeled off their model, because they have some really awesome documents and information that they have shared. So yeah, each co-op is different, and we've sort of just like picked and chosen from a variety of others that we're familiar with to kind of form our structure. um so yeah, blabbed on. Let's maybe talk about
Now this is the fun stuff. This is like co-ops are awesome. I believe in them full-fledged, but there are challenges. Bandwidth being the first one. You're only one person. There's only but so many hours in the day. You know, you gotta like be good at like doing the things that you can and being able to ask or like ask one of the other members, hey, can you fill out this grant today? Or do you know, just working with the members that you can and in the way you can. Um, Access to capital, that's another tricky game. Grants are helpful, but the way things are this year, it's been a little tricky. Coming up with some funds to do some of the projects, but
and startup funds too. I mean, let's be honest, not everyone has
yeah,
like a big chunk of change to invest in a property, and so we just want to name that.
Yeah. It's just been helpful that we're both experienced farmers that like we work with whatever we got. We know how to, you know, recycle, upcycle stuff, and um it's it helps save, especially in the beginning, because you can actually get a product to market with, you know, bare bones. And that's kind of where we're at this year. Hopefully next year we'll get some more funding to be able to buy new shiny stuff. But until then, you know, just gotta work with what we got.
Which is also an asset.
Yeah, it's
The
also
ability to work with what you got.
yeah, it is also an asset, definitely.
But what else? Oh yeah, and for us, again, this philosophical approach we have to land um and and shifting others' perspectives of it is tricky. Like, we view land as a commodity. The collective society we live in views land as a commodity, and it's really hard to break out of that framework. It's really hard to talk to people like, hey, so you have this farm, but you don't own the land you're farming on, but you own the house and the greenhouses and the infrastructure. Like, how does that, like, separating those two things is really hard to get people to wrap their head around, and even sometimes us too. Yeah, we struggle with like finding the language to bring people in sometimes. But really what we're that challenge of breaking that capitalist notion, breaking that like need to use money.
You need to own things, and that's what it comes down to. Is like we have to, it's like a false sense of security. But can you really own a tree? Can you really own a rock? Like, it's like,
can you own sunlight?
Can you own something that is here for you to take care of you? It's just hard to like to make the shift. But I mean, I did it, so I know I know other people can. What's the cooperative model?
Oh yeah, so and then yeah, just the challenge of being a cooperative. When you're your own person running your own business, you don't have to really like answer to anyone other than yourself, and it's a lot easier to make decisions, to make things happen, sometimes. So understanding that and like being able to work with people, meet people where they're at, be flexible, be patient, hold space, I think. But yeah, we do know that cooperatives can be tricky. The more people you have involved, the more opinions, the more ideas. So there's like a give and take to all of that too. But there's also some really good things. namely this incredible individual and his ability to just build bridges, I think, has been what's gotten us to where we are today.
And with every problem, there's a new person you can meet to kind of help. I've learned that I didn't grow up with money. Like for me, like if I needed help with something, I asked. Like I was never ashamed. I was never like ashamed of that. But I'm learning that skill is helpful in startup farms or startup co-ops. Um, and like she said, meeting people where they're at and making the farm accessible, right? Like you don't have to be a John Deere farmer to be able to put in on a farm, right? Like we have one person that runs the social media that doesn't necessarily get their hands in the dirt. Like there's things you can do to serve the co-op, to serve the business. And I think that's an asset, right? Like that's getting people involved the best way they can, So I think it's important. Um, and it's a BIPOC project. Like, let's be real here. We know the history. Come on now. Like it's not. It's you're doing the impossible when you're doing a BIPOC land project. And I want to be clear about this with everybody on this because it's like the stuff that we went through just to close. I mean, we've dealt with like racist banks and racist real estate ladies, and like it was a lot, And I realized so much more, like the value of my relationships with people because people were coming out to when people were finding out that we were running into these issues, they were coming out of the woodworks to help us, i.e. Land in Common, Third Place, like just a lot of organizations just really stepped up. And I was like proud to be a Mainer during that time because it was just like I lived here as a kid and I experienced some rough stuff but like I also got adopted by a wonderful family that like loved and took care of me when my mom couldn't. So it's like I know there was good people out here. And yeah, just putting it together was like the beauty of it all.
Yeah. And like and coming to understand and be a part of this really kind of small but mighty and growing BIPOC community in Maine of farmers or business owners or folks that are like doing some really rad stuff. That like solidarity and that synergy, I think, has been, and like tapping into that and feeling rooted and grounded and supported by that has really benefited us all, not just us. Like I think that like it's been a reciprocal like mutual exchange. And yeah, like as it is a challenge being a co-op, it's also an asset because of all the things that everyone brings to the table and the different ways of operating and the different moves you can make and I think we color outside the lines a lot, and we have this like freedom to do that in a way that maybe feels a little like loosey goosey hippy dippy, but I don't know, it's kind of real.
It works.
um so yeah, I guess like one of the things we were like prompted to think about and talk about for this was what we envision the future to look like as it pertains to farming or co-ops or our lives or whatever. And that these are the next gen, man. These are some of our members' children, and getting little brown babies on land.
Definitely. Like it's just a beautiful thing to see. Like they're just playing with butterflies and sand and like I think that's the vision for the future is being able to like have the space so we can host that. Like we can I know it takes like certain things sometimes to get black and brown folks engaged with nature. For me personally, like as a kid, when I lived out here, I always wore Jordans and I didn't want to get them. They're muddy, so I wouldn't go outside, or I would only like walk down like paved roads. And now I'm older and I'm just like rolling around in the mud with the kids and like yeah, and I appreciate it. I just wish I had that experience as a child to like kind of like help make better decisions in my life. I don't know, just being able to have like that spiritual awakening on land like younger. I wish I had that. I was like 30 years old when it happened. So
You're a little
Yeah.
younger than 30, but
Well, yeah, kind of. Well, now, I mean, to be like fully involved and like not afraid to farm, not afraid to like, not afraid of ticks.
yeah.
Like,
Though, like, admittedly, the full gear bug netting is kind of necessary in May here. I mean, I'm sure maybe in Vermont the same. Like black fly season is no joke, so
yeah,
you get munched if you don't have the get up. So I'm afraid of the black flies.
yeah.
um, but yeah, I think for us, like, yes, the vision of the future is, or for us, it's about kind of like demonstrating that this is possible, like to kind of create a model for this and a pathway for this, like, um, because ultimately we do want land to be decommodified, to be democratized, to be kind of available to all, and I do think that's possible. And just getting back to the children and the children, I think, uh yeah, when we can like teach that from the beginning, like teach it in schools when we're like really immersing the language of nature and where your food comes from, and just like that connection from jump in a way, both at home but also like in the institutions, um then I think we're doing it.
I mean, I think I look back and I'm like, dang, why did it take me so long to like really understand what co-ops were? You know, it's like maybe if I were taught this in school instead of a bunch of other stuff that I don't even need, maybe I made, you know,
Statistics.
yeah, maybe I wouldn't have been a statistic.
But
Um,
yeah, I think, yeah, just like eh, changing what we prioritize to like leverage, and co-ops is not a thing that people are familiar with. Co-ops are not a thing. Is that right? I don't know. Anyway, um, grammar. uh, so so yeah, I think like that framework changing is happening slowly, and the more we can like create models and create touch points for people to come in, whether it's like on our farm or like the so many other farms that are doing really awesome work. um and I think for us a lot of it is just like throw it at the wall and see what sticks. um there's a lot of trial and error, there's a lot of like maneuvering and adjusting, and that's the nature of co-ops, that's the nature of farms, that's the nature of farming in the climate we farm in now,
mhm.
and both like the literal climate and the political climate. um so so yeah, that flexibility I think is going to be part of it all always. I don't know what else, anything else you want to add? Oh yeah, just I don't know. Well,
So yeah, like more land trusts and more land back efforts, I think is also definitely on there. We're constantly talking about ways like what can we do to like could we do some training here? Could we do ways just to get more brown folks involved and really like um kind of show them how we did it, right? Teach them how to get a fiscal sponsor, teach them how to write grants. Like this is information that like needs to be shared, you know, and we're not trying to hoard it. We're trying to
Mm.
just tell people our story and tell them like, hey, if we can do it, you can do it, you know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's our time. What's next?
So yeah, I guess I don't know if we filled enough time, or we're happy to answer questions or prompts or whatever, but in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Um, Before I forget and we move into questions, I want to give you an opportunity to share any ways that we can support you in this work. I think the last I checked, you have an active fundraiser.
Do
So please drop that in the chat, like as a priority, and then we will, or just put that, make sure that it gets dropped in the chat tonight, if not at this very second. But yeah, thank you for sharing so much with us about your experience and really inspiring this group with your wisdom and your vision. And I think it's so hopeful and inspiring to hear you say that your vision is like showing that this is possible, because as I've sort of dipped my toe into hearing the stories of folks doing these types of projects and creating new systems, that is really, we need that. We need more models of people succeeding in creating systems that actually work for them and their people. So thank you for sharing yours. I think I have a ton of questions, but I think we're gonna have a lot of questions from the group. We can dive right in here with, well, let me just see if I have anything else that I need to, before we dive in, I want to just say now to the group, we're going to open up discussion and we really welcome your questions. If that is not clear already, please share them in the chat or unmute yourself and just ask the question. We're really hoping to create a discussion, conversation space here. We have a lot of time to get into it. I'll mention it again that if you are shy to speak up, but you would like me to call on you, you're welcome to use that reactions button at the bottom of your screen. And I'm going to do my best to get all our questions addressed and moderate here, but we'll also offer up some contact information for Antonio and Mara so you can follow up with them if not everything gets answered. So with that said, and maybe I will copy those notes for the visual folks into the chat here so everyone feels ready to engage. Let's just jump in with Jean's question here about if all the members of the co-op contributed a set amount of money to finance the land purchase.
Which I'm realizing is probably the wrong way to phrase the question. And like
Rephrase it for us, Jean. Let's hear the new version.
well, I don't know the right way to phrase it, but because I'm like with the ground lease, yeah, the land wasn't purchased. But I'm just curious like what the capital, I guess, like I'm sure there wasn't a capital requirement to like participate in the cooperative, but I'm always curious about that piece of it and how you decide who contributes, I guess, like what.
We kind of did it on, well, her and I were the ones that kind of went in our savings and kind of did it for everybody. We just felt like we couldn't pass on something like this. I don't know. I feel like if land comes to you as a Black and brown person and it talks to you and it tells you that they want you there, you got to do everything in your power to get it. So we leveraged ourselves for the good of the co-op, just to show them that that we got their back. And
but in our bylaws, like specifically as member owners, like there wasn't a financial buy-in. It was like a sweat equity buy-in, which we know like when we were faced with like an initial capital purchase, like we needed actual money to do that. So that's where we kind of like stepped in. So we basically kind of like lent money to the co-op, to where we couldn't fill with like donors or other fundraising efforts.
Is that money that you lent to the co-op money that you are hoping, like the plan for that was that the farm will like make that money back to pay you back?
Eventually, it was basically like a no interest loan.
Right. But as far as like you mentioned the structure being like eventually being the patronage dividend, like half goes into the farm and then half gets distributed equally. So are you all going to get more of that patronage dividend to like reflect the fact that you put more dollars in or not?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question because we've sort of said like that's in some ways our
kind of expensed it.
yeah,
Like, yeah.
our investment, our contribution, and so we're not tied to
Getting paid back.
Yeah, it's more about like creating like a healthy business and operating structure, and then if down the line it's such that
It can be, then so be it. But
yeah.
I mean, I don't really care.
Thanks.
Hope I
Jean, did
answered
you
your
get your
question.
question? Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Yes. Thank you all.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Antonio. Was there something else you were going to add?
Oh no, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't too short.
Um, let's talk about, so Mike put a couple of questions here in the chat. Does the land in common community land trust own the land and your LLC own the buildings and equipment? Does the LLC own housing? Why did you choose an LLC structure instead of a cooperative legal structure? So we could take those one at a time. And this might also be like a moment when Autumn gets involved, but maybe we'll start with you guys.
Yeah, we can start and then
Yeah, so the first question, does the land own the land? Yeah, so land in common does own the land and the LLC owns the buildings. And then there's housing on the land, it's just we're fixing it up right now. Um,
but yeah, the
but
LLC owns the housing, like
yeah,
the buildings. Yeah.
correct. And then why did you choose that structure? Why did we do that?
Oh, honestly, it was like
A time thing, right?
yeah, and it was sort of like the lower barrier to formalize a legal entity. We kind of talked to a lot of people as to whether we should go the cooperative route. And it was more like a cost and a time and a yeah, just like initial entry point. Not to say that we couldn't change structure down the line, but given our size and the scope of what we were doing and like the kind of model we had, it seemed the feedback that we got was kind of that was the easiest and most effective way. And we wouldn't necessarily be it wouldn't like have a negative effect on us, nor would filing as a cooperative legal structure give us
Any
a
benefit?
ton more benefits.
No.
So yeah, that was sort of
Are you guys comfortable sharing like how much, or maybe it's public, like how much money was raised through land and common to purchase the land?
Ooh, I forget. Autumn. Autumn, you want to answer this?
Or maybe Autumn, this is a good time for you to introduce yourself too and say hi to the group. If you're here. I know you were.
Hi. Sorry, I don't know how much we fundraised. I know what's left on the debt.
I think it
Like
was
70,000. 70,000.
70 fundraised, and then we were able to put together another 20, I think. Yeah. Something like that.
And what's left on the debt?
On the land side, I think it's about 40,000, and then I think on our side it's about 100.
100 and a little over 100.
105.
I think that's a question that comes up, or that like as far as kind of getting into the specifics and the nitty-gritty about how these things actually work, I feel like what you're talking about, like the land finding you and just like making it happen is so inspiring. And I also am hearing just so often from people that they're like, we just like every project ends up being this like big capital raise and people get really like inhibited or like that's a barrier that creates a barrier. So that's just why I was digging in a little bit to the numbers because I think it's helpful for people to hear sort of like dollar amounts, even though, that's not what it's all about. We wish it could be less about that, but at the end of the day, right? Like there is money that a part of like getting up to the next step. Okay. Let's see. I saw one other question. What are the ways you found successful in recruiting co-op members and are spreading the word about it? And it sounds like maybe you're not like specifically recruiting co-op members at this time.
Not like formally or aggressively, but I think like he always in his like
Travels.
impeccable interpersonal skills we have like an eye for like curating relationships and yeah.
I mean, it's hard getting like the black and brown folks that I know excited about land projects. So like that's the barrier for recruiting. It's we could only get people involved as much as they want to. Um so it's like we got to show, we got to, as a farm, so we have to successfully produce a product and bring something to market to get people more excited about it. So with the 4 people we have now, we know we can do that. And then after, we can show people that, hey, like we can, black and brown folks can have successful farms as well. And I think that'll be like the recruiting, the way to really get members recruited.
Yeah, and for now it's like we're not necessarily interested in like in having a ton of members necessarily. It's really, we just want people involved in the farm in whatever way makes sense to them. So like the recruitment is more just like bringing people out here, is like getting folks to come to an
Getting them on
event.
land.
Yeah, totally.
Like-
So the growing our membership comes in like a formal sense, I think, comes way later. It's more about these like initial germination period.
Plant seeds.
Yeah.
Plant the seeds, totally. One more question in the chat, and I'm also going to reiterate to the group here to feel free to unmute and ask your questions, to raise your hand if you need to be called in. This is another question from Mike about how you're defining profit for the purpose of the patronage. So is it after you're paid already, like a wage for your labor?
Yeah, I think what's important for us, and like I've worked on farms where I've like been paid like incredibly well taken care of and supported as an employee, and I've also worked on farms where like it was rough, and the importance of treating people well, giving them a fair wage, like is paramount. So ultimately for us it's about carving that out before, and then once whatever's left is what we divide out as our patronage.
Can you talk a little bit more about like your decision making? Maybe it's decision making, but just I think one thing that comes up a lot with or that I've heard folks talk a lot about is like the potential for conflicts between members, and kind of like how you're sort of intentionally cultivating your relationship as co-op members to stay as a cohesive and functioning group. Like any hot tips? Because I think there's like a lot of examples where
Having the
things
balance
get
of
kind of nutty.
having the balance of like farmers and organizers, I think is like the best thing that we did. Sometimes you have too many farmers and they're like, hey, we need to spend the money over here, we need to buy this implement for the tractor, and the organizers like, no, we need to do this training for the co-op, and so you butt heads on that kind of stuff. But since the organizers that we have don't have any farming experience, they kind of let us do the farming thing, and then we meet once a month, and it's one member, one vote, and we agree on things organizationally. But as far as the farming goes, they trust us to use our knowledge and which it's nice to have that as a farmer. It's like people that believe in you, that aren't doing it and are involved.
Yeah,
That's really special.
as like down the line, if we do grow significantly in our membership, I think the idea of having committees or parts of the co-op membership involved in a certain domain and have ownership over that domain to like make those decisions, and then like much larger organizational decisions come to the full group, but kind of having this more committeed approach too, I think is kind of the strategy. Yeah, as we look to grow. But admittedly, I will say, a lot of this still is being developed. Like we have these bylaws, but we also know that as we grow and as we figure things out and decide like, oh, this didn't work so well, this was a a sticky point where we're gonna adjust them. And so we've done some trainings with the Cooperative Development Institute, and they are amazing at supporting and providing technical assistance. So there's a lot of folks out there and organizations to support this kind of work and to like help you through the process, which we want to name also.
Totally. And do you, one more sort of like on this thread, and then we'll get back to the chat, but where do you all, the four of you founding members, do you live on the land, or do you live, where do you all live? How does housing play into this?
So we stayed on the land, and the other two members, one lives down the street in town, and the other lives in Lewiston, about an hour and a half away. So she doesn't come out here as much, but the other member usually comes up with his kids, and yeah, it's just pretty us here for the most part. We're off grid though too, so that's another factor that you kind of got to be a little rugged to kind of do it.
But we are establishing different types of accommodation on the land too, to have people live for at least most of the year. Again, being off grid 2 miles down a dirt road in Maine in the middle of winter is a challenge, and it's not for everyone. So I think like the winter is the flex time when there's a lot less activity on the farm, but the goal is to have places for people to stay and like work and live as much as possible. So we're kind of like growing that out incrementally.
Awesome. If we have time, I want to hear more about that, but we got to get back to these chat questions. One, I'm gonna, Tom, I will get to your question, but there was one clarifying question from Colleen that goes back to when we were talking about defining profit and paying yourselves, about if this accounts, what you described accounts for health insurance and retirement planning in terms of worker pay, profit defined. So whether you sort of like answer it as that question, it seems like what the interest is in you talking a little bit about how you are managing health insurance and retirement planning in this model.
I mean, like, health is wealth, but that's probably like a year 3 or 4 question that's gonna come up. We're just trying to get it off the ground and get it till we could have that conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you?
Yeah, I mean, again, like long term and thinking like as a holistic approach to livelihood, we absolutely want people to be supported in all aspects of what it means to have a livable wage, and that's definitely included in it. We're not there yet, but that is part of our planning.
And what about the retirement savings piece of that, or retirement planning, I should say?
Yeah, that's a good question.
There's no right answer. I think it's just like, how are you thinking about that? Maybe you're not, and you just
I'm
let us
thinking
know.
about it now. Thank you.
That'll go on the agenda at our next meeting.
Colleen, you got some good questions.
Okay, so then Tom's question is something that I guess we sort of skipped because we got so into talking about this alternative model. Just give us like a little overview of what you're growing, how you decide on your products, and your primary markets and relationships.
Garlic, the tomatoes, carrots.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing like small scale organic veg. Like as a reformed vegetable farmer, that will always be a part of like my life and our lives. But what we've really transitioned, I think, more so to in terms of production is livestock, and recognizing there's like a very big market here for halal in both the greater Portland area and in the Lewiston, Auburn area. And there are not, most of the halal meat is imported, like often from Australia. And so there is a really big need to fill that local market gap. And there's a growing demand for it with the construction of Maine's first USDA certified halal slaughterhouse. So we have been developing that relationship with our colleagues and friends who are starting that operation. And we're also trying to work with other small ruminant producers in Maine, New Hampshire kind of area, maybe Vermont, who can help create this small ruminant cooperative. So like we're putting on like a cooperative in a cooperative hat, which is another task.
But also, we are doing a pilot program for a Lewiston School District to do halal meals. So our vegetable produce will go to feed the kids. I think we're doing like 200 meals this year, and they're trying to scale up over the next 4 years. So
Yeah, so the majority of our stuff is going, our produce is going to a wholesale market, pretty much just one, which we're lucky to have. And the halal will the meat products will be kind of a mix of retail and wholesale. We do a small CSA, kind of similar to other farms like Soulfire and Rocksteady who do solidarity shares. So we grow a couple of weekly baskets for families in need based on like income. So that is a subsidized program we've got funding to do and support a couple of families with that.
And you're doing it all yourself, we learned before everybody joined this call with no employee. So it's an amazing amount of work and food that you're putting out. Andrea, let's hear your question, and then Anthony, I'll read yours, and then we'll circle back to you, Mike. But let's hear from you, Andrea. Go ahead.
Thanks so much for sharing your experiences and what you're doing. This is really, really interesting. So I'm going to try and phrase this question. And Rev, I hope you'll jump in if you need to clarify. So Rev and I have a small farm in rural Wisconsin. And a few years ago, we kind of started switching it over to just create a safe space for queer, Black, and brown folks to start their agricultural enterprises and explore. And so part of making it a safe space is really having it be a space that's really just for people of color and queer people of color. And I'm kind of the token white person who's in the background. So we kind of have this ongoing discussion about how to like get resources from the white people because of white supremacy. White people have the vast majority of the resources, and Wisconsin's really racist. And wanting support from white people and financial support, and buying the products that the growers are making, but we want the space to really be your Black and brown and other people of color. So I'm just wondering if you have negotiated that kind of dilemma or like found anything successful in that way of bringing in resources without having white people take over or dominate the space. So, and Rev, is there anything you think you should clarify with that question?
No, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Because it's difficult to need the resources but not really want that energy on the land. Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean, but you know what I'm saying?
Right. So one thing we're doing because of that, we're actually doing a film screening of Farming While Black, the documentary, on Juneteenth. But we're not doing it here. We're doing it at another white farmer's land. Because again, like you said, we want to be able to filter who comes in and out and feels like they have control just because they give you $1, yeah, I think if you have any other friends with land, maybe just see if they'll do host a fundraiser at their space just for you guys, and go home with your earnings.
Yeah,
so that's very smart. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, and for that event, it's a white farm who is an ally, does really awesome work, wants to support, has like perhaps a little more like better infrastructure to accommodate an event, and we're admittedly we're giving any BIPOC identifying person, community member, a discount code. They view the screening for free, and white folks
They
pay
paid
$20. And and I think also just we're intentional about carving out time and spaces where the farm and the event or whatever is like specifically for folks from the BIPOC community, and not to be like exclusionary, but like to be exclusionary,
I
but
mean,
then also to invite like cross-pollination, and we work with a lot of really awesome white-led organizations that I think get it and understand that dance and that balance of like when to be a part of that and how. So yeah, leveraging those kinds of groups too, I'll say has been helpful for us, and trying to find those and leverage those.
hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I don't want to put you on the spot, Autumn, but I wonder if this might be a good moment for you to chime in just a little bit about land in common, and maybe any of your experience navigating some similar dynamics.
Sorry, a lot's been said. What are the specific dynamics you're referring to?
Yeah, well, I guess so. The reason I'm calling you in is because outside of this specific webinar, through the registration forms, we have gotten a lot of questions about Indigenous land back and just ways to get land, more BIPOC folks on the land. And it seems like land in common has a pretty established model that you're working with here. And you were, Amara and Antonio shared, their version of working with you that was enabled them to get on the land that they're on. So I'm curious to hear, I think that the group would benefit from hearing just briefly about land in common and sort of like your mission and how you came to be.
Yes. So as far as land back goes, we've done land back not to the tribal entity specifically, but to an Indigenous-led land trust. So it's a little bit different than general land back, because normally you would go through the commission, but with the land trust we went through, we didn't have the frameworks really set up. It was kind of from one land trust to another. So regardless of the fact that it was coming from a multicultural land trust to an Indigenous land trust, it was just land trust to land trust. And both of the legal teams, we kind of went back and forth because we also wanted to have specific language that protected the Indigenous land trust legally, but and also ensured that they would be able to use the land as they needed it, and without harming it, because a piece of the land did have an easement on it. So, yeah, honoring that easement, but also honoring Indigenous sovereignty and also practicing trust, because why would we not trust Indigenous people to take care of the land, in the best way possible? Because that's what they've been doing for 100,000 years, right? They don't really need an easement to tell them don't destroy this piece of land. But legally, easements are basically impossible to break, which is why they're easements. So that kind of complicated things more than just saying like someone having a piece of land and being like, hey, I want to give this to a tribe. So it made it kind of a different project, but it was successful. It just kind of took longer. There is a bit more back and forth, and we wanted to make sure that everything was really just moving at the pace of trust rather than trying to only look at it through like a legal lens. And sorry, what was the other part of your question?
Well, I think like just to sort of tie it back to what Andrea and Rev were bringing into the conversation around sort of the resources to be found from white folks that we're trying to like shift money and resources and power into the BIPOC community. And so like any thoughts or reflections or lessons learned as far as being an organization that is fundraising for BIPOC land projects.
So, I will say I'm the only BIPOC staff member. So that makes it kind of hard. We also have an all-white board. So when we're applying for grants, like we're supporting all these BIPOC stewards, but we have a board that's white and we have the majority of our staff that's white. And sometimes that looks not super trustworthy on paper, because there really are entities that will maybe find one BIPOC person, tokenize them, and be like, "Hey, look, we're multicultural now. Well, let's get more money." And we're actually kind of trying to do things backwards, and we have Land in Common really wanted to hold on to the whiteboard because they're able to use their white privilege to benefit BIPOC stewards instead of benefiting themselves as white people, using their privilege and connections to help us further the mission. Sometimes that's a little bit hard to write in a grant. We're actually in the middle of restructuring things around, because we're realizing, okay, this wasn't the best setup to start with and to be supporting our BIPOC stewards with. I will say that none of our actual stewards are, none of the stewards are strictly like Indigenous led projects. Most are Black, Brown, Latinx projects. And there are grants that are more geared for Indigenous led projects than just BIPOC in general projects. So looking at funding, you have to be very careful with your wording and very transparent with what's going on. A lot of times that just equates to having like a face-to-face meeting with the grant coordinator, and you kind of explain to them, this is our situation. This is, this is how we support these projects, and then they'll kind of give us some insight on how we should word that, or they can kind of, when the grant is being reviewed, they have that extra information to hold. But I think that working on a structure that really upholds the transparency that you want to promote with your mission is really important to start with. That's something that Land in Common kind of learned the hard way. But yeah, for people that are building these projects and also wanting to support BIPOC projects, transparency is the best, and just kind of leading with your intent and letting the mission speak for itself. I think if you're showing that you're doing the right things, if this projects that you're supporting are actually becoming successful, it really does show that, okay, you really are supporting these.
Thanks, Autumn. That's really helpful to hear. And how long has when did Land in Common start?
Land in Common has a weird history. It started as like a small intentional community, and just kind of like one small piece of land. And the group of people who lived on that land really wanted to come together and protect it. Then they realized that becoming a community land trust was the best avenue for them. That first started with a 200-acre piece of land in green, but it kind of came like chunk by chunk. There was an elderly couple who owned that entire piece, and so there was like first, a 30-acre piece, and then a bigger piece, and then more and more. And then actually, when the elderly couple passed away, they still owned a piece of it, and it got inherited by their daughter, who then donated it. So then that full parcel of land became land in common, and then slowly they started bringing more land in. So it was really a slow progression. I think it was 8 years. I've been with them for almost 2 years.
Okay, that's helpful. Let's turn back to you, Amara and Antonio. We've got 3 sort of more technical questions here in the chat, and then I think that'll probably get us to time. I'm going to start with Anthony's because we haven't heard a question from Anthony yet. How much do you rely on resources and assistance from state cooperative extension, or do they not provide what you need to be successful? Also, are there SARE grants that you can get?
We did just apply for a SARE grant and did not get it. Yeah, they just put out a historically underserved farmers grant. But we'll try again. Other resources from state cooperative extension. You know, like Maine has a really great cooperative extension office and you know, technical assistance stuff for sure. We have not had to access that a lot yet. Like hopefully the pest situation this year won't beat us down. But it exists and it's there for us if we need it. The majority of our assistance comes in a lot of ways just like from our neighbors and fellow farmers, I think, to like support us and have helped us be successful so far. Anything else?
No, just with every problem you run into is a new friend you can make.
Yeah, totally.
That's kind of been a
You
theme.
take away anything from tonight.
Yeah, if you take away anything, don't get scared of the problems. Just ask for help. It's out there. Trust me.
I gotta write that one down. That's very inspiring.
Um,
Mike's question here, can you talk about pursuing financing and working with the cooperative fund a little bit? Did it matter to them that you were not legally a cooperative? Were there any complications or lessons learned?
Well, we had one complication with the real estate lady because the guy's name, the actual loan officer's name is Chris Linder, like Linder. And the real estate lady didn't believe that we were gonna buy it. She's just like, you show me proof of funds and blah blah blah. So we ended up getting a letter from the cooperative fund and gave it to her, and but it didn't have a dollar amount on it. It just said that our application is in review to purchase the property. And then when we gave it to her, she's like, this is yada yada. Like this isn't real. It's like nobody's name is no loan officer's name is Linder. So
it was compounded.
that was it was compounded.
But yeah, they didn't care that we weren't legally a co-op as long as we could provide our operating agreements and our bylaws that suggested we operate as a co-op. That was what mattered to them more than anything. And you know, we will say the Cooperative Fund of the Northeast is a great organization, and they've put together some like help support some really amazing groups, and also now like through Land in Common have enabled us to secure this property. We did, you know, admittedly initially when we tried to work with them on our own without the kind of backing of Land in Common, it was it showed we got
denied.
Yeah. Trying to be delicate.
Yeah, we got denied.
We got denied. And it kind of, you know, just demonstrated to us again, even though this is not a conventional lender like a big bank, there's still the barriers there. The systemic barriers are there. Like, you know, as a you know, a disadvantaged group who doesn't have the equity, all the things to bring to the table that a bank likes to see, they still weren't able to give us the full loan that we needed because they have to cover their asses. So.
And so you used Antonio's mantra of asking for help somewhere else. This is a case in point.
Yep.
There's a problem, there's an opportunity. The last question here, oh, and Suzanne, I see you have your hand up, so we'll see if we can squeeze it in. The last question from Tom in the chat was maybe it expands a little bit on what you've already been talking about, or maybe it's already been answered, but it's about if there are any state and federal resources that you found particularly useful or frustrating or roadblocking in terms of understanding and supporting your vision and mission.
Well, I will say like Maine has the Permanent Commission for Racial Equity, and what's the full name? Something, I don't know. That they are trying to really support like focused efforts on BIPOC groups, not just farming, but across the state. So there are a lot of state resources, especially in lieu of a lack of federal resources now, that we are fortunate to be able to tap into. Federal grants are a bear, but we still try and do them, and as much as we can partner with other institutions and organizations who have experience doing that, who have managed federal grants before, who know the lingo, who know the jargon, who know like what they want to see and how they want it presented, has been like, if you can find those resources or people, partnerships, like that's been so helpful for us.
Yeah.
Because I think there's are dollars out there. There are individuals out there. There's funding. It's a full-time job to find it and get it, but you know, we do the little that we can, and as much as, you know, I think again going back to another takeaway is like, as much as you can tap into people and support one another in your collective journeys, and not like silo yourself and try and reinvent the wheel every time is.
I mean, there's also too, there are private funds. There's a lot of monies out there privately, and also community banks. There are banks out there that will give you money while checking your credit,
unions
you know?
and stuff.
So non-traditional, just look for it, it's there.
Awesome. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. Suzanne, I don't want to overlook your question, but I'm also noticing that our numbers are dwindling and we're getting close to 7. So I'm gonna, it was my plan to sort of wrap us up and then have 5 to 10 extra minutes for folks who want to stick around and chat longer. So let's put your question into that time. So stick around, Suzanne, so we can hear from you. I'm gonna just briefly wrap us up here and ask that you share something in the chat that you're taking away from this learning experience tonight. As well as I've seen a few folks share resources in the chat. Someone mentioned Soul Fire Farm. And then Lauren, thanks for sharing dawnlandreturn.org. Again, I'll compile all the resources and share them out. But let's hear your takeaways. What's one thing before everybody disperses into their evenings? Let's hear your one nugget that you're carrying with you. Encouraged. Every problem you run into is a new friend you can make. Ask for help. Wealth redistribution is real and happening. That is hopeful. Ask for help. Get out of the way if you need to and offer help. Definitely yes to all of those. Ever challenging aspects for the BIPOC community. Explore turning firm footing farm into a cooperative or LLC operating like a co-op. Thank you for the questions posed here tonight. I feel encouraged by this experience. Many thanks for La Finca. This helps my farm dreams move forward. Beautiful. Partnering with other organizations for fundraising. The importance of working with land trusts, leveraging white privilege to reallocate support to BIPOC communities. Cooperative model, maybe without the legal stamp. Thank you all for sharing your reflections. We do have a official evaluation of this time together that would be helpful if you can take a moment before you log off to complete. And if somebody, maybe Mia, could be so kind as to re-share La Finca's fundraising link to make sure that folks are clicking on that before you log off, that would be great. You see what else is coming in here, because I like this hopeful time at the end where everyone talks about how much they got out of this. The inspiration of asking for help. That is an amazing takeaway. That seems like a common theme here. And the ground lease model, a resource here, Collective Courage. That is an incredible book. I also strongly recommend, and again, we'll share that out. Partnership across co-ops, across businesses is a big help, especially navigating race and privilege. Encouraged to extend my homestead. Yeah, love this. Folks, we're leaving with some beautiful seeds to be spread and grown into this world. So Amara and Antonio, thank you. And Autumn, thank you so much for your time, for inspiring us all. We're really grateful to have you here with us and learn with you.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening to us, for sure.
So we are going to meet again in September for continuing this series. We're taking a summer break because we know we lose folks to all that happens in the summer. Yep, the weather, etc. So we'll be back September 9th, and we'll keep you posted about the presenter for that session. And I'm going to officially close our session now. I will stop the recording. And for those of you who are ready to move on, feel free, and we will stick around for 5 or so minutes to answer some last trickling questions. I'm looking here to okay, I'm going to stop the recording now. And Suzanne, let's hear your question.
Thank you.